when I mentioned Matiang'i, they stood without anybody exciting them beyond there. So as I continued, the name grew, and it now has grown to the point where even those of us who are also political players in this country have ambitions of being presidents in this country cannot afford to ignore him.
Hey there, and welcome to Fanya Mambo Africa. Always an exciting time. This one, I am excited because I have a man whose identity, if you remember, there was a guy who was during the demos of Azimio with a sufuria in the streets.
Yes.
And his heart identity all the time.
Yeah.
The Secretary General of Jubilee Party, Jeremiah Kioni, is with us today on Fanya Mambo Africa. Karibu sana.
Asante sana, nashukuru kwa kuwa hapa.
How are you doing?
Fine. We thank God for being there and having an opportunity to say something or do something.
Yeah, that's
Even
good.
being awake, alive. Nashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu.
That's true. Good to see you.
Yes.
And if I remember, and I'm not sure I'm not the only one, I'm sure every viewer sees you with a hat all the time. A red one for that matter.
Hey.
And almost a red shirt all the time. How many are there in your wardrobe? Would you give accounts?
The red hat I was given as a birthday party, a gift by party members. And then I blooded it. Lakini kuanzia hapo, nikaona ni kama inakaa kwa kichwa zaidi. So, very true of deliberate choices, but quite a bit of it of finding myself in colors that match the party colors.
How much you've owned Jubilee?
I not owned like the Jubilee Party. It's difficult to own a party that has a membership of 7.1 million. You can only be one among the others, just a servant of the party.
Okay.
There are 7.1 million registered members in Jubilee Party. It's actually the largest party in Kenya.
Largest?
Larger than ODM by far.
Are you sure?
ODM is struggling to get 5 million. We are at 7. And when we recruit properly in Kisii and Nyamira, we would be heading towards the 10 million mark.
And it is that season.
Which is the season now.
Okay,
Yes.
That's good to hear. Of course, everyone who's watching has seen the politics that have been going on. And I'll just start. About 2 weeks ago, former CS, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, landed back in the country. Where has he been? And it was very instrumental to see you with him at the airport, receiving him. And then your caption for the photos was, "It's all systems go." What is that about?
No, when you remember, I think Fred was here sometimes last year, towards the end of last year, when his daughter was getting married and all that. And we, during that time, we also had a number of sessions together. We sat with him on for different reasons, including the concern of where is this country going. And the issue of the leadership of this country did arise. And more people than myself were keen to find out whether there is any interest from any other person other than those who had already expressed the desire to help us get out of the mess that we are in. And Matiang'i did indicate at that time that he will be available as a presidential candidate. But he still did indicate at that time to ensure that he works with others. And it is from that, then he has engagement out of the country. Like in every other Kenyan, he is also looking for ways of earning a living. There are institutions that think that it can be useful to them. So he has an engagement out of the country with some of these world institutions. And that's where he was. And as we continued mentioning his name across the country, I remember the first time I mentioned his name, I was helping some people at Gilgil who were facing evictions. And because of the very many problems, I asked them, na hii shida yote tutatoka kwa njia gani? We will help you in court, But before we are done with you, another group again will be facing the same problem. And you can now see what is happening in Narok. It's going to be kila wakati. How do we get ourselves out of this problem? And I continued mentioning names. Asked him Nahuyu, mentioned Matiang'i. And because it was a tent of about 100 and maybe 10 people, because it was 100-seater, but it was crowded. When I mentioned Matiang'i, they stood without anybody exciting them beyond there. So as I continued, the name grew, and it now has grown to the point where even those of us who are also political players in this country have ambitions of being presidents in this country cannot afford to ignore him. So he comes back to the country. He tells me I'll be here on this time, and I was there to receive him. It's been since that time mimi nimekaa kado kwa sababu nilikuwa nikitaja jina yake sana. Sasa ajiuze watu waseme ya kwamba there's anything else I have other than wanting a good leader for the country.
Okay.
But that does not mean that tumeenda popote. No, we will hit this road running on our own accord.
As Jubilee.
Na mimi nitaisukuma and not because the other candidates are not good, but we must make sure that we are dealing with a one-term regime of William Ruto.
Okay, before we go to the discussion of performance of William Ruto, what makes you think that Dr. Matiang'i would make a good president? Because you started selling the name to the people. So what convinced you that Matiang'i can lead this country, and not just lead, because leading we've had presidents, of course, but lead Kenya for the better?
A couple of reasons, but one is that Jubilee has been in power for 10 years before the UDA. And those 10 years, one of the key actors, other than the head of state then, the former fourth, are the CSs. And in the CSs, you see which CS is a mover. And by the way, we had quite a performing team of CSs, whom I meet with a lot of respect, Akina Munya, Mucheru, Yatani, very good people at the rate Makoha. Performance. But I engaged CS Matiang'i as a member of parliament in Dragwa with the county leadership of Nyandarua, led by Kememia. And I saw the way he had organized the government, because he was the one chairing the subcommittee of the cabinet subcommittee, which is literally the whole cabinet, only that it is not the president chairing it. So when a colleague CS sits there, it becomes a subcommittee of cabinet. So he was chairing it, and I could see his way of managing things. Two is that if you look at the track record of Jubilee, the number of projects that were commenced in this country, started, some finished, some still stalled. If you look at the way we grew the wealth of this nation from a 5 trillion shillings economy to a 13 trillion shillings economy, things that Kenyans may not quite have on their fingertips, and look at all that was done, and then learn from people like Uhuru, the former, that the first thing you do when you win power is to finish projects that had been started by the former regime, whether you liked it or didn't like it, because whatever was being done for the benefit of this country, even if sometimes we have questions on the projects. For example, like now, and I don't want to digress, we have the housing project that Kenyans are unhappy about. The big question is, when we have another government, what are they going to do with all the resources that have been pumped there? Having seen the way Uhuru managed Kibaki's project, and having seen how Kibaki managed Moi's project, and knowing all the projects that were started by Jubilee that are still waiting to be completed, those things and the resolve that you see with Matiang'i, those among others tell you that even as you look around, because you're not going to get an angel, you will still end up with one of the Kenyans. But who is it that can move us to this other level quickly? One, we want to win. But it's not just winning against Ruto. It is also what do we do? Who can help us turn around the country very, very quickly? Who is this that Kenyans can give the benefit of doubt? Because it's not going to be easy. There will be some very tough times after the exit of these people. Who is this that Kenyans can give the benefit of doubt? And if you look at all these individuals who are there, and we are not saying that there is anything crossed, we are still waiting for more to express their desire. As it stands, I think Matiang'i is ahead of them. And I don't want to forget, Matiang'i is ahead of all of them, head and shoulders. When Matiang'i took over the education sector in this country, education sector was in a mess. And any country or community that does not pay attention to the quality of the education that is being given to the young people, you really are not bothered about the future. Because you, Sarah, you have this outfit, and well done for this. You have this outfit because you went to school, a system that was credible, that can be believed by people even outside this country. So the fact that he got there and said, this needs to be changed, really touched me. And I'll tell you, 2008, I talked about the education system in Parliament. I talked about it to then it was Professor Kamal. He is still a nominated senator today, you can ask her. And I said, we need to move, this system is not working for us. It's not good for us. It has not served us well. This issue of stealing exams and the rest is not helping us. And we had a lot of recommendations that we did. What Professor Kamal said is good ideas whose time had not come. So she accepted as a Minister for Education then that this is a wonderful thing, but it is not time for us as a country to go that direction. Matiang'i comes, wakes up one day at 4 a.m., has a police contingent with him, walks over to the Kenya National Examination Council, orders everybody out, and changes in the education sector start there. And every other person agrees that we actually had credible examination process while he was the CS. And of course, Professor Makoha took it and Usha.
All right.
It is those kind of radical changes. People who have capacity to bring those changes overnight without fearing the criticism that comes with it. Because you know where you want to take us, you believe in it, and he has demonstrated it, that even Kenyans would want to see. And that's why, after mentioning his name here, Narok, Kajiado, everywhere, today, take out any polling. He's likely to poll better than all the others. Until the pollings I've seen, he's doing much better than all the others we have in the field, and especially, he's the one who is beating William Ruto better than all the others.
Wow, interesting. I mean, that background is key. I think, well, in the education sector, everyone noted on that. However, there would be a question about his style of bulldozing things. Is it that as Kenya we can't have a leader who, I mean, we had President Kibaki. He wasn't bulldozing, but he made things done.
Kibaki,
Yes.
I don't want to cut you short. Kibaki was a bulldozer. I'll tell you how.
How?
Kibaki was a very quiet bulldozer. You would walk to his cabinet office or his office, OP, with wonderful ideas. Sema, hii mzuri sana. Hii mzuri sana. Hey, nyinyi mmefikiria sana. And he puts the thing in the drawer. That's the last you'll ever hear of it.
Really?
Until it comes to where he thinks all of you should do. He never moved. So he was just a silent but a real bulldozer. There is nothing that was done. And then if you come up with a good idea like Professor Anyang' did, he came up with this issue of Vision 2030 and the economic, what do I call it, stimulus programs. Again, stimulus program with Uhuru, but he came up with some of those economic policies. He would sit with Anyang' almost throughout the week, almost at the exclusion of all our cabinet ministers. So he never spoke about it, but Kibaki will never look behind you. Kama unapigwa na ni ukora yako, anaangalia huko.
Do you deal with your problems?
Yes, and you know, Matiang'i speaks, even Uhuru speaks, but there are people, Kibaki never spoke, but you never moved him from where he wanted to go. That resolve is required of a leader. Hautaki mtu anacheza hivi na upepo kila wakati. This country requires that resolve. Matiang'i comes out as fairy. He speaks about it and pushes. But the others who have also achieved it, like Uhuru, and Uhuru achieved a lot for this country, and Kibaki achieved a lot, he got us out of the mess, while have the same kind of characteristics. This guy, I believe he will actually outperform both Kibaki and Uhuru. And what do we want as a country? Is a person who can do better than what others did. Because even the times, the situations are better. The infrastructural development that we have in the country is much better than where Uhuru found it from Kibaki. Now that Uhuru dealt with, left all this infrastructure development, somebody needs to take us to the next level. Remember, we were headed out of the, we were in the middle income category.
That's a very interesting conversation if we look back what the president said the other day in China. However, before we get there, you've spoken of Matiang'i as this amazing human being, which I am not even in doubt because he performed for sure.
And I really would not want to create a picture of anything else other than a person who works hard and loves the country.
I love that.
And has passion for the country, not an age or somebody, no.
But a guy who works for the country.
And perhaps a person like tumewekelea hizi vikombe kwa meza, ni wale wengine wakae kwa meza, basi watu wachukue ni kikombe gani wanataka.
Very good. Perfect imaging. Among the youth, one key thing that is never going away with Matiang'i, and I hope he will come here and explain himself, is the ghosts of Raila and police brutality. And especially if I remember during COVID, we had the story of the Kianjokoma brothers. The case is still in court. How then, as are young people supposed to entrust such a person who oversaw police brutality? I mean, it's gotten worse with time, but he sort of played a part in establishing that.
Well, when you are dealing with that kind of a question, it is always best ask the person. I have personally asked that question of him. I know the answer he has given me. I do not want to pitch on his behalf. That's a question that I would want him to answer the young people. And I've asked for more people than himself, because I've also engaged others who are also in that sector. Because these are things that you cannot avoid or afford. You cannot afford to not get some clarity, even as you say the name out there. So I want to decline to get into that, because it is an issue. There are issues that are best coming out of him.
Okay. And we hope that he will answer them.
He doesn't shy away from, at the opportune time, he doesn't shy away from such things.
All right.
Without doubt.
You are the Secretary General of Jubilee Party,
yes.
But there's a chairman.
Yes.
What's the chairman's position? And I want to assume the chairman is still President Uhuru Kenyatta.
No. The party leader is Uhuru Kenyatta. The chairman is Saitoti.
Okay.
And the party, you remember, you know how it works is that you express a desire, and then that desire is either grown by others or yourself, and then the party organs engage on that decision and then make the decision. That is why you see towards the end of a term, nearer the election, sometimes 8 months, 9 months, rarely more than a year, but it's around 8-9 months, most of the serious parties will have an NDC. And it is the NDC that now makes that final decision of saying, yes, we have seen you move out of the country, we have heard Kenyans talk about you, we have had you conduct interviews, you have had public lectures at the university, and we think that we can endorse you. Or you have this and that person. Who do you endorse as an NDC? I foresee that kind of a scenario. And without doubt, if there is only one person from the Jubilee party, then the party will have to think through and endorse the party. But then also, if there are more than one person, again, you go through that voting. And that's why the setting of the names is important. Remember, we have other names on the table in other parties. The same will be happening to Kalonzo, Matha, even Eugene is also a presidential candidate. He has said it himself. Omtata, all these other individuals. So they would have to go through that in their own parties. And then, of course, we would want to build a coalition. And the coalition will be made by those people who come from their own parties. And it is again, when you look at, and when you're making the coalition also needs to make a decision as to who then becomes our flag bearer in this coalition. And it must be influenced by the desire of most Kenyans, because it's a democratic process. Kwa hivyo lazima utembee na utembeze jina yako,
so the party
na utembeze maneno yako. And what we do as Jubilee is to tebeza the person we think is the best candidate for us. And I like it because you notice that many of the other political players, those who have been there and those who joined us recently, are following suit. They rarely have a cup of tea without looking for Matiang'i ako wapi.
So he has the blessing of the party leader.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say that because that will come at his own time. For what it takes, we have him as a person who has said he wants to run on a Jubilee ticket. The blessings will come through the party organs.
Okay. Earlier this week, we also saw a meeting that happened between these different party leaders. Matiang'i was there, Dr. Mukisa Kitui was there, Eugene was there, Karua was there, Kalonzo was there. What's the discussion?
And a couple of other many names were also not there. And
yes,
they certainly have to fight their ways. They're also interested in being in that room. A name that is also being mentioned across the country is Natebea. He's a key player in the political landscape of those who are not in government. You have somebody like Peter Munya on the other side, a name you cannot ignore. He is also a key political player in this country. And I can mention very many other people who are not there. And the desire is to have those who believe that William is doing a bad job to sit together and come up with a unified opposition so that we can do what Kenyans have already decided needs to be done, and that's to make William a one-term. Kenyans have decided William is a one-term. You can do that polling. Kenyans have also decided that there is nothing good going to come from this system. We will then fail Kenyans if we ride on that wave, on that momentum, without some clarity in our minds. And you see, as we continue speaking out as individuals, not necessarily as a unit, as individuals, Kenyans will then decide, is it this one, is it this one, is it this one? So we, in Jubilee, and I can tell you that is the belief of Matiang'i because we have talked with him also, believes that while we have gone around the country, the Kenyans should also be given a way of indicating who among us should sit at the head of the table. It's not an entitlement. It is not an issue of personal preservation. We do not want that. We don't want to go and settle scores. I know there are people who have been injured by William. All of us have. But we do not want to go to bring in vengeance into that thinking. It is an issue of who can turn this country around quickly and allow the institutions to do their work. The best punishment that we can do to William Ruto and his team is at the ballot. And every Kenyan wants to punish him at the ballot and tell him, you lied to us, you have mistreated us, we are done with you. Then the institution can do the rest of the work. We want a team of people who then focus of where do we take the country from today when we have been given that mandate. We don't want an issue of Fedeta ulifanya to refine. That will be done by the institutions, which should be allowed to function as provided for at our constitution, without interference if they are allowed to do. Kama uliiba, utafuatwa na wao, lakini isiwe ni ndio kitu ambayo inafanya tuingie kwa serikali ndio tukufuate. Tutaruhusu ufuatwe, but we are coming into government to ensure that we turn around, get people back to school, education functioning, health sector functioning, transport sector functioning. We want the roads done. They are now getting potholed. We want to see the economy growing. Manufacturers are exiting this country at an alarming rate. We are talking of the growth of our GDP, the value of our economy from 5 trillion to 13 trillion. It is likely that we are now at 12 because we could only be going back. How do we move it to 20? Because that's how young people benefit from a country And that's how everybody would benefit from this. And even the issues that you're talking about, including we cannot ignore that the 25th of June, something major happened to this country.
But
and we should
do
never,
you people
ever
understand,
forget.
do you understand as politicians especially, why we the young people went through the streets in June?
We will continue engaging so that we understand. If we don't, there is it will be very patronizing to say that we know and we understand. No, and that is why when Uhuru went to Uganda and challenged the young people to step into the plate, you get horrified to see the host of Kenyans politicians insulting him. One, he didn't say it here. He said it in Kampala. Two, the Kampala leadership is not complaining. We are not hearing it from Uganda, Ethiopia. It is here that insults are coming. And what did he say? Young people step into the plate. And it's not the first time.
He has said it in Kenya before, actually.
He said it here. He always says it to me in the party. He wants to see young people coming on board. And that's the challenge I have. That's the challenge I have. And I can tell you, if you ask me in every county I've gone, I have identified young people. Some of them could not even hold the mic. Today, they can hold the mic and address the people. And that's what we are going to do in Jubilee. By the end, by when we are done with this, we will have new faces of leaders who do not have a baggage.
However, I have a question in line with that.
I'm not saying that we are wishing away everybody. But if you don't bring other people on board, then it becomes a problem.
The meeting we saw, which had the candidate you want, had nothing to do with young people, or no young person was present. What message are you sending to the young people of this nation if you're uniting to form a coalition, but then in that room, there is no young person? So all of you have been in the system for probably 30 years. How are we supposed to entrust you with our lives as young people?
The other challenge that we have in the young people is that do not wait to be called. Get yourself in the room. That is politics. And that's what we are doing in Jubilee. We see you, I see you have a potential, I will throw the mic to you and say, Ebu sema jina yako na unasimama wapi. And it's not the same since we started going out. Because there is always that hesitation. You can be able to speak within your peers, but you hesitate to step in this place. Some of those others who step again, they also step for, and they get swallowed by many things. So we will give that opportunity as a party, and it is not talk, no. We'll give that opportunity. Every time we allow it in the county, because that's what we've been doing the last 3-4 months, we always ensure that we have the Gen Z. And they are the ones who will help. And let me not just say Gen Z, the young people, because even millennials and some people, they are all there. And you see some very good. I came across a young man called Stephen from Transmara. He may not even have money to come to Nairobi. But that Maasai young man from Ukirigoris, if he is encouraged, these leaders in Narok will have a problem. And he's not the only one. You go to Kajiado, we have some other people we found there. You go to Nakuru, there's a young girl we found called Sarome. You go to Laikipia, another girl we found there called, I think, Christinos. She is now at the University of Kenyatta, finishing. They are there. We just need to allow them to, and they should not come in the manner that William brought leaders from the mountain. People who will tell you that the finance bill is too big like a Bible, don't expect me to have read every verse in it. That's the stupidity that has gotten us to where we are. It is that kind of leadership that we do not want, that still don't feel guilty, that we lost the lives of young people who are saying we want a better Kenya, and they were killed within Parliament, the area where people's representatives go. And instead of thinking of being imaginative, how do we listen to these people? You allow police officers with AK-47 to shoot into a crowd. Some of those things, we will never forget them. And let me also say, they are unforgivable. So even as you come to this whole table that we are having, don't come and think that we are going to allow us to forget it. We want everybody on board so that we can get William out. Lakini usifikiri ya kwamba tunasahau. And I'm saying because the problems we are in, we were not put in this problem by foreigners who left the country. Ni wa Kenya na ni viongozi walituambia tupite hii na wakahakikisha wameambia watu waende kwa shida. Wengine wakiwaambia this is not the way. So we want everybody on board. But don't also think that we have forgotten that you put us in trouble. And while we want you to be with us, it is very difficult for us to entrust you with kuuliza wewe tunaenda wapi. And that's why I want to tell you, when we were wearing sufurias and the rest, we were called mad people. Mimi niliitwa Mugoroki. Na watu waliniita Mugoroki. Now they are where we are. When we were in Kalonzo, they came and followed Kalonzo. Where now we are with Matiang'i, they have followed Matiang'i, which is a good thing. We are happy. Yes? Because the cloud, watu wanasema sikiza crowd. But you are a leader if you can actually influence the crowd for wengine kutusikiza crowd. We introduced the name of Matiang'i to the crowd. The crowd is now talking of Matiang'i. Others are listening to the crowd. Kwa hivyo kuna wale wako mbele ya hiyo maneno na kuna pahali tunaenda. Now we are not going to be distracted. And I want to say this. There are those of us who also have declared themselves. Sitting as a SG of Jubilee, I could have declared myself as a presidential candidate or even the deputy. But there is something we need to do better than just issues of personal preservation, greed, or issues of vendettas. This country needs to be turned around. And if your neighbor can do it better than you, even if he comes from a smaller community, not the big Mount Kenya community or the Kalenjin community, if he's coming from a small community, usianze kusema watoshi boga. Hapana. They will have issues to explain like you are saying. But even as they explain those issues, it is also necessary to ask ourselves, where are we and what do we want to, how do we get out of where we are?
I mean,
who best?
You lead a political party, and every time I look at the party politics of Kenya, I question the sanctity of political parties in Kenya. Because today you will be in Jubilee, it doesn't have to be you direct. Tomorrow you jump to ODM, the other day you are in UDA. Do we really take the political parties' act serious, especially as the leadership of political parties?
A good question, and you will notice that by the time we are wearing sufurias and calling those of our members who have been elected in the Jubilee Party to come and we join the opposition, because we could see that the country was going the wrong way, those elected chose to go and work with the oppressors. Now they have woken up and they are trying to come back. And it takes the character, the individual. You will see Uhuru Kenyatta has never wavered. He's our party leader. He never wavered. Even when he was the leader of this country for 10 years, what he never did is he never crushed the opposition. You work with the opposition, but you don't crush it. And we also learned this from Kibaki when he was working with Raila. He would tell us, and I don't know who would ever write books about Kibaki. You see, we were young, the Gen Zs of that time, and very anti-Raila, because he had ran against us 2007. We had crashes in this country, people died, and all those kind of things. So when he did an act, because the act was drafted by Akina Orengo, and I think Kiraito may have been part of it, I think Mother also. He came with the act to us, and he called us in PNU to KICC. So I hear you mnapiga kelele huko sana, because we ask, how can he agree with Raila? Says there is iko hapa. Kama uko na kitu ya maana ya kusema, soma uniambie pahali unataka tubadilishe. Because it was an act, not swallowing opposition, but how do we work with opposition? And that is how, when we had one of the highest economic growth in this country. Then, when they came to working within the system, bado sisi, uko na ujana wetu, we are still having that fitina. Unasema Raila alienda Mombasa akasema mkeka ni nusu, hakuna choo. So tunaenda kwake na I remember we met him at the airport one time. Tumekimbia huko kwa sababu he was out of the country and Raila had been very unkind to us in Jubilee. Not Jubilee, that time was PNU. You know what Kibaki asked at the airport? Sasa hiyo yote mmetoniambia inakusaidia na nini? Hiyo yote imekusaidia na nini? He never went to swallow the opposition. He allowed you to be where you are, but work with you. He detested anybody who wanted to sacrifice his political line, like being a member of ODM, and you want to come and look like you are sabotaging ODM by working with him. He would never allow you to do that without consulting Raila. What we have now seen are people who've been elected on Jubilee ticket, on ODM, I think even on Wiper, who quickly went to Ruto, and instead of Ruto occupying the higher moral ground and telling them, yes, we can work together, but we have a legal framework that we need to be respectful to, he was encouraging them to even kill parties. We in Jubilee have been caught for the last 2-3 years. Why? We were fighting for our survival because we were being inherited by William and Rigi G, who was part of this. They were the one undermining Jubilee while they are inside. And I even see when you're outside some of those traits being there. So it takes the leadership of parties. You will need to say, why are you not behaving like X, Y, Z? My question is, why don't we behave like I saw Kibaki? If I say Uhuru, you say I'm biased because he's my party leader. But he did the same. He never encouraged people to defect to his party. And that is the way our constitution is framed. Working without compromising. Because you are the minority, they are the majority, you work without compromising. You oversight. So I agree that Kenyans are really wary of political parties. And that's why I'm saying, even going to form a new political party, and because you think you cannot be in another political party, it still serves the same fear. You want a political party kwa sababu wewe huwezi kuwa kwa chama zingine. And how do we get into a new political party now? And we are saying that we want to get Ruto out of office in another 27 months. You will easily be playing into Ruto's hands without knowing, even without signing any document.
So when you talk about these partnerships, I find it interesting. What has made it not work now that we already have the broad-based government, which essentially was supposed to?
If we go through the history of this country, we had the National Accord was really a document that was worked by the parties and Kenyans. Nobody crossing over. I believe Raila was looking for a similar thing with this broad-based thing. But he has untrustworthy partner, a person who is looking at how do I use you to win 2027, not how do I work with you to improve the lives of Kenyans. When Uhuru had the handshake with Raila 2018, it was how can we ensure that we deal with the issues that have always made us fight after every election. A BBI was put on the table, which Raila and Uhuru worked upon while they still maintained their different offices. Not a single member of ODM was crafted into the Jubilee government. But the document was put there, committee was put together, and the minority and the majority were working together to try and sort out the issues that are so contentious in our constitution that always makes it difficult for us to function well after every election. Things that I think would have helped us get some people off the car rooftops every time we have finished elections. Because after elections, you should sit in an office behind a desk and try and come up with solutions. So it is really, and then of course, you also need to understand the times. The biggest mistake that was done by ODM and Raila, and I believe that's why they are not reading from the same script with the Orengo, Professor Anyanyon and Sifuna and Ababu, is because the young people, after we had the Azimio demonstrations. And people were killed when we were out in demonstrations. You remember even the impeached now deputy was saying I would wake up at 5 na anafanya press ups ya kutandika sisi. Na watu walikufa wengi. Come to the 25th of June, the young people had told Raila, Baba, mefanya, stay at home. Let us finish this game. That young girl, and those are the leaders that we need to look for in this country. She may not be interested in politics, but she captured the moment. When you now betray that kind of a statement from your grandchild, whatever arrangement you get into is impossible to sell to these Kenyans. So the reason why this broad-based government is having problems and is already running into headways is because it's looked at as a betrayal. You went into bed with people who Kenyans had already resolved. Walikuwa nasema kufa dereva, kufa makanga. Why? Because they had said there is no rescue, there is no salvaging that you can do to the Ruto regime. And true to it, since they got into power with Ruto, what is it that the broad-based government has achieved? Is there any turnaround of anything that was happening? If there was, why are we going to bury some maybe 5, 6, 7 people in Narok who were just shot by police officers? How is it if there is an issue of land and you want to use it for sugar farming, now the Rocos have an issue, you sit with them and sort out the issue. You don't go with the guns. So there isn't anything. What he has actually done is to strengthen that arm of a dictator, of a person who executed young people, of a person who were actually overthrown by the young people on the 25th of June. And that is why this working relationship is not going to work. As you get into the relationship, the goodwill of Kenyans must be with you. Even as we pick our presidential candidate, the goodwill of Kenyans must be with that coalition. Otherwise, it will not win. And that's why I'm saying, good for us to sit in boardrooms, but go out and get that mandate from Kenyans. The public participation thing, whether formal or informal, must continue being done in anything we undertake as a nation.
That's very true. I have a very interesting question on the other hand, because every other time we see, you are a lawyer, and every other time there's always quotes of the law is very clear. But that, I feel, applies to the citizens. But to the political class, the law is never clear. And we have seen things that the president or the executive has done that are against the law, and nothing happens. So how do we sort out this gap?
One is you've said something very interesting. My professor in the law class, Professor Kothogendo, the late, used to tell us, if you ever come across anybody, whether a lawyer or an ordinary person saying the law is very clear, that's a legal idiot. Because if it was that clear, we would not be in court haggling over issues. Interpretation of the law will continue, and it's part of life. And that's why we have the judiciary. You will read it this way, the other person will read it this way, we go to court, and we all submit ourselves to the decisions that are made in court. And it is a very healthy process. And when it gets that is why you also find executives also trying then to get favorable decisions from the judiciary, not to exonerate even those who are not in power. Because we all have submitted the decisions that are made there. Of course, the challenge comes when an order has been entered into, and especially against the executive, and they again ignore those orders. So it is not a bad thing for us to be seen to be arguing as to what does this provision of the Constitution or a statute mean or imply. But it also places the judiciary at a very important place, because they must make sure that they are truthful to our provisions, our constitution, our laws, and at every given time, they are guided by what is that is good for the public. What is the public good, the judgments that you get into. And it is good to say that, or it is important to point out that we have other aspects of the, these are the institutions that are quasi-judicial, like the tribunals. They are not quasi-judicial, but let me just say, let me not go too far, like the tribunals that have allowed us to get to where we are. I want to single out a tribunal that was supposed to be doing some very important work within the IBC. They are supposed to tell us who is a person who can be offered to Kenyans for elections and who cannot. That was a very important unit in ensuring that we achieve the objectives of our constitution by the quality of readers. And that is an area, a tribunal that every IBC, and especially the one for Chebukati, was quick to run away from, because it was a tribunal that was to say, you can run, you cannot run. It's a sieving. Ni kama kichungi ya tuondolewe uchafu. Lakini walipokaa kando. And then we also compromise the provisions of Chapter 6 of our Constitution. Now we have leaders who cannot sleep without thinking of something that will annoy us. I even put it another way, leaders who cannot remain awake because somebody died at the gunfire and was shot, or you saw some young man's head blown open. Hiyo sio shida kwao. Spineless people are the ones we have in government. Again, I go back to the same thing. Leaders will tell you that the finance bill is like a Bible. So don't ask us what it provided. And you sat in that parliament to pass it. Those are the leaders who would have been, taken care of if we paid attention to some of this. So the judiciary has also not quite lived up to the expectations. They have also allowed us to get into the mess that we are in. How is it that they are told by the executive, we want to appoint Sarah to be the minister for interior, but he has this case that have been pending for the last 10 years. It's not been heard. Quicken the process and, remove it. That's what happened to a number of people who've been appointed as ministers. They had this case, rape case, murder case, theft, and the judiciary was used to clean them. So they are also party to the mess that we are in.
Which is pretty a sad scenario and a reality, because now we are living the reality of those things, which is why perhaps where we are now. The other day, the BBC released a documentary, and now our parliament is called Blood Parliament. You served in the 11th?
10th and 13th.
10th, 13th.
Yes.
When you look at the quality of debates we have in regards to this documentary, and people just saying it's one-sided, people deserved to die, and yet we have seen even a KDF soldier, or rather had a uniform. What goes through your mind when you look at the leadership?
It's terrible. It's terrible. We had the difficulties of 2007 clashes when we were in Parliament. And I don't remember in one time when either side of the political divide seemed to have rejoiced in the death of anybody. We were all saddened, and we all got in the process of saying, how do we get justice out of this? And I remember we were heavily involved in debating an act of parliament where we were trying to set up a tribunal, or to, long and short of it, where we wanted, instead of going to the ICC, why don't we get the issues resolved here locally, so that we can, some of us believe that if we are sorting them locally, more will come out that may help us heal. Others felt that if we have them here locally, our judicial system will be compromised. That time we didn't have the 2010 Constitution. But it was a debate that was held on the floor. Everybody wanting to know, how do we sort out these things? We had that parliament, you can imagine, we had Akina Nyong, we had Kiraito in it, we had Mother in it, we had Professor, we had Orengo in it, Raila was a member of parliament, Kibaki was a member of parliament, Uhuru was in that parliament. So you can, Karua in that parliament, you can imagine the quality of debate. So it was a very, very competitive parliament. You needed to know what it is that you wanted to speak, to say when you are getting on your feet. And it was also the parliament, and some of these things, some of these requirements of parliament, people think they are a joke, or they are things that you should have wished away. If Marende would find you reading a statement when you're on your feet, that was the end of your speech. If you cannot have it from your head, you are not worth to have come to this National Assembly. And it helped you do a research, think through what you are starting to say. And it improved the quality of the debate. Today, mtu anaandikiwa na mtu anakuja kusoma kitu hata yeye mwenyewe haielewi. Not that it is bad to read, but it also makes you lazy to have gone through and come up with it. So there are quite a number of things, amendments that have been done, or changes that have been done to the standing orders that have actually compromised the quality of the leadership we have in Parliament. I am saying again, the fact that we have this now blood parliament, and it has to take BBC to wake us again 1 year later, when we have members of parliament who have continued to allow parliament to function like nothing happened. Nothing happened. Then they even have the audacity of saying people had to die. You remember Ichung'wa being interviewed by the BBC and saying, anytime we have a demonstration, people must die. When you have that kind of mind, it tells you that we have sunk very far. And that's why when you talk about a presidential candidate, you're also looking at a presidential candidate who can elevate the quality of the leaders. Remember, Matiang'i had told us, we continue this route, we continue allowing Ruto, who was also with Gachagua, we are going to end up with wash. He said 45, 50, 55% of members of parliament will wash. We have come to live the reality. If you hear the people who speak in vernacular, some of these leaders who speak in our Mount Kenya languages, the kind of insults that they insult the people who voted them in, there is no organ in a person's body that we have not been called. Whether your mother or your father, hakuna, na that's a leader. So we have compromised the quality of our leaders. And as we turn around and look around as who can lead us in the next round, I really keep listening to what Matiang'i used to tell us. At that time we may have been, I think we were in parliament. He would talk about the quality of leadership when we call them to committees and sit and ask them questions. And you realize that a CS who doesn't even help bribe some of the members of the committee will permanently be on the floor. He is called to the committee almost weekly. Really, you require somebody who look leaders in the eye and tell them this is not going to work, but a person who has the confidence of Kenyans. So when we are looking for who is this who can help us turn this country around, it's not just economically. We are talking of even that, the mindset of a leader. All these things. Na hii uongo kuamka asubuhi unasimama pahali you launch a thing today and tomorrow you remove that play, come with another one 10 months later and relaunch, unatubeba ujinga.
Something else that has been raised as a key concern by Professor Anyang' Nyong'o and James Orengo is the threat to devolution. And we've seen the fights between county, national government, Kura, Kera. And actually the letter that was posted by Professor said that the president is now a threat to democracy and is taking us back to the days of President Moi. How do you feel about this whole thing? And since, of course, you travel to the counties, is there a threat really, since you interact with governors? Are they also delivering?
A very serious threat to devolution. A very serious threat to devolution. And if we are not careful, again, we will need somebody who believes in why is it that we devolved our systems in the first place. And I will go back again to the starting of, Jubilee is the only party in this country that has implemented this constitution for 10 years. We did 10 years, the first 10 years of this constitution. And one of the decisions that was made by the party with the help of the party leader Uhuru Kenyatta, was devolution was supposed to have been done in phases. The provision was that devolve a function to a county when you have established that the county has capacity. Uhuru told us this is recipe for chaos. We are going to devolve all functions and develop the capacity of devolution in the counties. Develop the capacity of those functions in the county when we have already devolved this. If we start doing it in piecemeal, it will get to a point where somebody else may come and just kill it. It doesn't mean that, again, he wasn't an angel. That doesn't mean that we didn't have questions that needed to be asked and questions that perhaps could still be asked. But I still look at that and say that was wisdom. Because he then left everything go to the county, and we started struggling with releasing money to the counties. Were there delays? Yes. Were they as they are today? No. We have counties that have not, members of the county assembly who have not received salaries since October. One. We have counties that cannot even deliver anything in terms of development because of the way the resources are being released. Banks that were giving overdrafts to counties stopped because they said, you counties are no longer reliable. Why? Because the national government is not releasing money as it should be and as provided for in our constitution and the statutes, enabling statutes. We have counties today that cannot help even when there is an emergency anywhere. Why? Because they've just been left to survive on their own. And yesterday I had the members of the County Assembly of Kiambu in my office, Jubilee Party. And they came and they said, you see the problem Matiang'i is having? One of the reasons why he's having that problem is that he also compromised the composition of committees in Kiambu County. The PAC committee is the oversight committee. It is the one that's supposed to bring out the mistakes that are, the misappropriation of funds, misuse, even the stealing of such. And you are supposed to pack it with the people who are not in your party. And Kiambu, unlike maybe one or two other counties, have a sizable number of members elected on other parties and especially Jubilee. And Jubilee is not the majority in Kiambu. UDA is the majority. But what did he do? PAC, he packed with UDA. So all the issues that are being raised now would have been pointed, and even perhaps, unajua kupiga kelele inazuia watu wengine kuiba ama hata pesa kuibua. Wangekuwa wamempigia kelele, maybe they will even have saved him the embarrassment that he's going through. But that's not the case. What they would do when they think there is an adverse report that's likely to come, they would boycott the committee. It's still shared by a member of Jubilee Party, but they deny the committee quorum every time there's something adverse on the table. So even the governors themselves are also compromising devolution. But it is tops. When the top is rotten, it goes all the way down. We need to get it right at the top. And of course, we also try and get it right with other governors. And you see, people who are outspoken like Natabea, not to say that I am aware of how he is managing the resources of the county, but he becomes a target immediately by those who are on the top. For us who are not within the county, we say for political reasons. For those who are in the county, if they tell us it is because of mismanagement, we say let him face his day. But even those inside there are not able to tell us it is quite because resources have been misused.
But generally, how do you rate most of the governors? I'm sure you don't know all of them, of course.
We've continued dropping in terms of the study. Where we started, the governors is not where we are. It's a downward trend, and it needs to be changed.
So is the Senate playing its role properly?
Again, Senate will only play its role properly if it is not captured. But the Senate we have is like the entire parliament is at a capture. So one can make a lot of, you see, if it's a question of impeachment, it's a question of how are you looked at now by the broad-based government. And when you talk about the danger of that is that you have the minority and majority seated on one side of the divide. We are still in the minority Jubilee has never even indicated that we are exiting Azimio. Not because we are doing well in Azimio, but we promised Kenyans, and it's good to remain faithful and on something that you talked about. When the time comes, we'll move and join the other coalition, because you cannot be in another coalition when you're already in the Azimio coalition. But it doesn't mean that, what did I want to say? That ODM was forming the bulk of the leadership of the minority. They also took all the leadership positions, both in the Senate and in the National Assembly. And when they become compromised by walking over to the broad-based thing that is really a disservice to Kenyans, oversight of the institution of parliament is totally compromised. So they are also not doing
100%. You know, someone would argue that Kenya is going through this because the previous leadership, of course, of President Uhuru Kenyatta got us here. You are part of that government. And the whole idea of borrowing has now just, maybe Uhuru left it here, now we keep pushing. Is that pendulum ever going to stop?
Borrowing is a problem that will be there for, and it is there, maybe across the world you'll hear complaints of borrowing. And borrowing, even in the family, there's always a question that tusitiobe sana, let us not borrow. Let us not borrow too much. But I think the test also on this other side, of course, we need to borrow within our ability to repay. But I think the greatest test is, what do you have to show for what you have borrowed? The infrastructural development that we needed to undertake. Two things. What do you have to show for what you borrowed? Again, do we get the value for the money we borrowed? How much of the money we borrowed was misused? And that's why I keep saying the constitutional institutions should always play their role, so that they are left hunting those who misuse the resources. It's not worth of us as politicians to just say pesa iliibiwa. Kwanza, it is naive of you to say pesa iliibiwa. You are the one in control of all the machinery, the state institutions, or you are the one in charge now, and you should then be telling in the institutions, or allowing the institutions on their own accord to follow those who stole. But to keep saying siliibiwa, it becomes political witch hunt, because you are doing nothing. But what I wanted to say is this. Yes, Jubilee borrowed. And people said, yes, we have borrowed too much. But look at the infrastructure developments that were there. Some of them, they said they are white things, they are going to the bush, they cannot be completed. They even reverse some decisions that have been made so that the programs becomes unprofitable. Not realizing that when that program becomes unprofitable, we as Kenyans will have to pay it at one point or another. The SGR is a good example. William is just coming from China, going to look for money to now get the SGR from where it is all the way to Maraba, after having badmouthed the Chinese. It's not going to be easy. I don't expect them to give him money and to come with it. They will promise to give him money, but they are likely to wait until his exit, because they would want to see the project they invested in go to the end so that it becomes economically viable. So it is not just the borrowing that is crucial, it's also what do you use the money for? And my question is, Uhuru may have gotten us to about 6-point-something trillion. We are now hitting 12-13 trillion. We can see what was done by the 6 trillion, and it is 6-point-something trillion plus 1.19 trillion that was left by Kibaki. 1.9 trillion, which was still being paid. We are now at 13. What do we have to show for this 6 trillion? And Uhuru borrowed 6. I'm saying 6, it's not quite 6, but he borrowed 6 over a period of 10 years. We have borrowed slightly over 6, almost 7, in a period of 2 years. What do we have to show? So when we are saying that this should be a one-timer, it's not because the others who are there were, by excellence, performed very well, but this is really below any person, anything that we ever imagined as a country.
Very, very interesting perspective if you look at it that way. When President Ruto was in China, there are people who are unhappy. And of course, even the West. I mean, with the Trump president, it's become hard for Africa to get money, probably from World Bank, IMF, and all that. What's the impact of us now looking back to the East, vis-a-vis the relationship with the West?
You see, we keep saying that a wise person is that who uses the experience of others. Kibaki came into this country when we had a 24-year rule under Moi. Moi, who never bothered with the East. He was permanently with the West, who eventually used him as a puppet. He used our country as a guinea pig, where they brought those structural adjustment programs that made Kenyans poorer by the day. And what he did is that he never insulted the institutions of the West. He just looked East and started working with East. We saw infrastructural development in this country during his time and a turnaround of our economy. Uhuru came, used the same line. He continued with the East without insulting the West, to the point where even the Americans now started looking for how can we also invest in this country. And I remember they then promised that they are going to do the Mombasa Machakos highway. And those of us who knew how they behaved when Kibaki was in power, we again said, ngojea uone kama huyu mtu kuna pesa wataleta kutoka West. Ruto comes in and latches to Washington. And the Mzungu says, haha, here comes our boy. They even give him to sit on Biden's seat. Can you imagine how ridiculous that was? Atikwenda kukalia kiti ya rais mwingine ndio ukuje you impress on Kenyans. Yani anatubeba ufara sana ujamaa. He latches that side, insults the East, and waits for 2 years. Nothing is coming from the West. Now he's going back to the East after having insulted them. And that's why when he was in the East, he was still told on his face, Sima, microphone, kaa kwa ofisi fanya kazi. You are being told by a foreigner, a person who is not even your equal, is just a president of a
gas company.
He comes and tells you in your own country, Zima microphone, kaa kwa ofisi. Why? Because they have now understood him. And I can tell you, it's very naive. We get money from France, or we get funding from France on an arrangement with the French government, the private sector, to fund the Maramba Road. Ruto comes into power, the first thing he does is to cancel the contract. Then he realizes that he's not going to get it anything better. He goes back, and instead of signing at 160, they now tell him it is at 180. If you give it the benefit of doubt to the French, if it wasn't Kenyans making 20 billion, cool, because that is normal for these people in power. At 180, he still goes back. So if he had really the wisdom of learning from others, he would just have gone back there until this contract was signed by the previous government. When are you commencing it? Not to try and... He cancelled all the contracts. The expressway is a good example. This expressway, the person who did the expressway, the contractor who constructed the expressway, had the contract to do the highway. Improve it and get it to some decent levels because of the damages, and also improving it to be anywhere near the expressway. What did they do? They cancelled that contract and gave it to several other contractors. Some of them got the money. They have never done the improvement of that. Those sections of the Uhuru highway that were damaged. So we are up in an expressway, fantastic thing. When you come down, you wonder, how disjointed can we be in terms of thinking? And the answer is there. The contractor there had the same, but they cancelled this one. Wakaacha kwa sababu ile ilikuwa imemalizika. So that you get into a new contract on everything and get a commission. So if your drive is the commission and the wash was biashara, then we are where we are.
I mean, you've mentioned the issue of commission, and when he was still in China, when he was selling the idea of investors coming to Kenya, he mentioned that Uganda, Tanzania are, I don't remember, is it like they are lower, wherever, that's why investors opt to go there and not come here. But then when you speak to other people, and even some investors, we had the case of Dangote, the issue was kickbacks is what is sending people away. The Vietnamese guy said we have no power, like we need to sort our power first if we need to have investors. What exactly is this whole going? How is this going to affect Kenya? The fact that a Vietnamese can call us out in the public, the fact that we are calling out Uganda and Tanzania in a different country, and yet Uganda is our biggest trade partner.
I was in Abu Dhabi with the third president, Kibaki. And when we were seated in that conference, Kibaki was out shopping for people who can come and partner with the government, or perhaps as investors, invest in our power generation capacity. When the Vision 2030 was conceived, one of the things that we needed to ensure we have capacity is power to drive the industries that would eventually create employment. And that is why the issue of power generation and connectivity, which we had moved by Uhuru from 28 to 78%. When he was taking over, it was 28%. By the time he exited, it was at 78%. Without adequate power in the country, you will not attract investors. Without a stable power supply, you will not attract investors. You mentioned the mountain. If you go to places like some parts of the mountain, like now places like Nyahururu, Meredie, that whole belt going to Nyeri, and even this other one going all the way to Saburu, they lose at least 7 to 10 days in a month without power. Because of it's off, it's on, there will be interruption this afternoon. So I was talking to a welder, and he said, I cannot quite guarantee you when I'll finish this assignment, kwa sababu sijui stima itapotea lini, itakuwako lini. When you have those kind of statements, there is no manufacturer who requires power 24/7 who come near this country. We are being beaten to that by the Ugandans and the Tanzanians. And Ruto would just do better by ensuring that more geothermal plants are being opened at Menengai. The fact that we don't even have anything new going on there means that we are again going to find ourselves with a terrible deficit of the kind of power that we need. But also very important is the issue of you need to be a reliable leader. I need to see where you are going for me to come and invest my money in your country, and the returns will be coming 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Our constitution was supposed to give us economic stability, and it still can, the way we have it. But the persons who've been put in power have made us very unreliable because of this issue of promising. Kama wewe unaambia watu kesho kutakuwa na maji hapa ama stima ama barabara, na kesho yake inafika hawaoni, mwaka inaisha, how do you think that you can go and convince a Chinese fella there that the contract you are getting into, you remain faithful to it? Those people out of this country, when they are engaging you, they have your track record at home. They have their intel team. So these are the things that are making people migrate from here. Unfair taxation, unnecessary too high taxation in this country has made, we have lost very many manufacturing industries from this country. At the last count, or last year sometimes when you were still doing many things with Azmio, we were at 6,400 units that had left this country, gone to Uganda or Tanzania. If you talk to Akina, these industrials, Manu Chadaria, and even the guy who does these other products, I'm getting off my mind his name, they'll tell you, they are here in Kenya, but they are better off having the units in Uganda because the environment is better, power is there, infrastructure, the neighboring environment, na ukora hakuna, the amount of money that you must bribe. There is the issue of the regulations that you must fulfill before you are allowed to set up anything in this country. We were getting down, we were reducing them. And you remember even our favorability was increasing during Uhuru's time. Now we've gone back as one of the very unfavorable areas where people can invest. So these are some of that's why when you say you want these people one term, because hawana form, hawana mwelekeo, hata wajui pali wako wakati huu. That's why you find Ruto one time is in China, the next time you see him seated kwa masishi ya Pope, na alikuwa ametuma huyu mwingine anaitwa Papa wa Roma. Hiyo confusion, you see it at that level, it is happening everywhere, all the way down to our devolved units.
Diplomatically, I'm not sure we've been doing very well, but from where you sit, we had the issue of RSF here, then our tea is now not going to Sudan. Again, also, the whole idea of having a Vietnamese leader who has so much following, what does that do to us diplomatically, and how are we faring in terms of our relations?
Completely confused. Nobody can say that we have a coherent foreign policy. And it is not because we don't have people who have the capacity to help us craft one. It is that those at the top have no respect for the technocrats in the civil service. We had a very coherent foreign policy with Kibaki and Uhuru. You knew where to go, what to say when you go there, when to go, because like now, while we were in China, you are in China and the Americans they're having trade war with the Chinese. So why would Chinese invite you at this time to their side? Ni wanajaribu kuambia Amerika mtadu. We still have people coming to us. Nyinyi. So you don't want to get entangled in those kind of things. But it takes your ability to respect those who are engaged in these things on a daily basis. We have very good people who understand the foreign policy of this country, the foreign policy and the global dynamics that are the geopolitical things that are going on. People can be able to see and tell you, perhaps this is not the time to comment anything about Israel and Hamas. You remember we made a comment and then went looking for the AU seat. You know, some of those brothers, watu watakwambia ikiti haikuji. Haitakuja hata mkiruka wapi. But that was the thing. We messed it. It was because of our confusion as to what should we do, who should we be engaging, what should we say. Na kwenda kusema uongo. You are here in this country, you go to Ghana, promise them a seat at the African Union, at the same time, promise the same seat to another African nation. Ai, jamani. Hata sisi wenyewe, uko nje, and Matiang'i was telling us, the friends from outside the country have been asking, what went wrong? What is it? People needs to get back to work and get the country back on track. Otherwise, you are almost at that tipping point.
Our president is the chairperson of EAC at the moment. We have conflict in Rwanda, Congo, Sudan, South Sudan. Do you think that's, of course it's under IGAD, but of course EAC plays a role since they are member states. Are we making any progress from our side?
How I wish you'd allow another person to share. Because if you want to know whether people respect you in your own country, is when you call the heads of state, when you see a number of them not showing up, or not even bothering to listen to your views. You know, for you to be allowed to be a chair of such institutions, IGAD, EACC, SADC, not EACC, EAC, SADC, or even the AUC, for you to be allowed to, it's an honor. Yeah, there are many things that are looked at, not just perhaps your academic qualifications, you have a PhD or the rest. It's also the kind of respect that you command among these other people, because anything you do and arrive at is persuasive. There is nothing so that you can enforce on another foreign nation, but you sit and agree, and people agree, and since we respect Sarah, we are going to go for that program. But if they have no respect for you because of how either you are behaving locally or how you look at them, how you are behaving at the national level, then you will not be listened to. And that's the case we have now. We are at now. At anything that William is holding on, either within Africa or anyway, we are NATO, RI, you know, those kind of decisions that they only impress you if you don't understand what the implications are at the global level. And that also impacts on how the Tanzanians look at you, how the Ugandans look at you. I saw Kagame the other day castigating a leader whom they didn't name, but he says he's a darling of the West. He is doing this, yet he is stealing from his poor people. And I don't think I have, but I felt, oh, I hope he is not talking about our leader in the name of William Ruto. And I'm not saying he's the one he was talking about, but he said a couple of things that seems to be exactly what we are complaining about.
Since we have, I think we have an African problem, because Africa seems to be now like a village. We almost go through the same issues. Which leader in Africa at the moment would you cite as not the best among what we have?
I haven't.
And why?
I haven't really. Maybe I gave up a little earlier than what I am reading from your question. It's not a thing I've really paid attention to. But these young leaders who have come up in the West are some good examples.
I don't know if you follow.
Men who have taken over power.
Via coups, you mean?
But you'd want power taken through in a democratic manner. But they seem to be impressing a few people, not many.
Are you impressed yourself?
My only thing is that I really don't like, coups are not a good thing. But, well, it looks like the coup may be giving them a solution there. The problem with coups is that those who come through the gun are really willing to subject themselves to the ballot. And when they do subject themselves to the ballot, it is at their terms, because they always have the gun next to them. So the voters always seem to quickly agree to what a good example is our good neighbor, Mzee Kaweri Kaguta Museveni. He came through the gun, and you can see the ballot has remained in his house for all those years, and I don't see him giving out to any other person soon. So that's the only bit, and many are the examples of that nature. So we may have Traore and the others doing very well, but how I wish they can then move to the next phase and allow the people to now pick them. In any case, they approved themselves, so they can do that. Maybe it happened once in Ghana, but coming through the gun is always a blot.
So you've alluded to the West African leaders as some of the good leaders, even though they've come in through a coup. And the other day we had elections in Gabon, and the guy who was elected was actually also led a coup, but voted now.
Yeah, and that becomes now the mandate. The thing is that it is a very delicate thing. It's a very delicate transition. More than the one or two countries that have succeeded in stabilizing themselves, they've completely lost it for a long time. And the fear of losing it is what actually makes people hesitate. For example, when the Gen Z were right there on the 25th of June, and even Azimio, there was a day Azimio did more than anybody expected. Even we as leaders of Azimio, we were outdone by the resolve of Kenyans to get rid of the system. There is always a question that you sit back and ask, how are we going to manage this transition? Are we likely to lose the country and lose the opportunity of turning it around if we allow ourselves to run through the term with the mess that we are in? Or are we at a point where baya ni baya, waende? Those questions are questions that when you are pushing a system, you have to ask yourself. Because then you'll be there to blame, because you'll have led people to push this system out while you did not have a way of stabilizing, or you did not have mechanism of ensuring that we move on from where we are. And we've seen that in many countries in Africa. So unfortunately, that reality also strengthens the hearts of the dictator, or the resolve of the dictator to say, my father may have punished you, but you have not seen what I'm going to do to you, like it was in the case of it's a thing in the Bible. So instead of William changing direction and listening to the people and seeing there must be something wrong that I'm doing, he comes out and calls us criminals. He calls the young people terrorists. He dismisses them, never even bothered to say pole for those families that lost their loved ones. So it's a really delicate thing. And if I was to be available at the next point we are doing our constitution, we should not make it very easy to get a system out of power. But it should not be as difficult as it is under our current constitution, because it makes those in power take us for granted.
So in short, you're saying...
It is like he has a guaranteed 5 years of messing you up.
So an amendment would be nice.
Anatembea akituangalia, mnasema na kudanganya kama mtoto akisema utadu nini. Si ataenda alale kesho amke, apige kelele tukutane 2027, and I'm doing everything possible to try and link myself in. So our constitution, but it is another very delicate thing. Our constitution needs to be looked at. How possible is it that we can introduce a possible transition mechanism when we are in this kind of a mess? But when it is a dead 5-year term, and if you throw him out, it's like you have overthrown the constitution, the army will step in, you do not know who in the army is stepping in. Those things makes it a little difficult for people in power to behave while respecting the dignity of those who voted for them.
Okay. Personally, and across, I think, a lot of young people across Africa, Ibrahim Traore has become a star, and the image of what leadership ought to be. I mean, he's a junta, of course, but whatever he's doing for his country seems to be working.
Equally impressed, but...
What do you think is the seed that he's planting across the continent?
It's a good seed, but it is a good seed for those who now, when we are going to the ballot, these are the radical kind of things that you want to see. But again, they are only available because of the people who come to the table. It will be a very good thing to bring such leaders on board through the ballot. Because like I'm saying, we have seen such good results before. People who came in with Mugambi, for example, was a darling for the whole of Africa. But where did he leave Zimbabwe at the end of the day? He may not have come in through the gun, but ideally, and we have reasons to say, yes, again, you cannot be good forever. Museveni wasn't a bad guy when he took over in the 80s. He was again a person. I went to Uganda when he was taking over from the dictators there before. But if you talk to Ugandans today, they are looking forward to the day he exits and allows some other. But so I'm happy. I also like the kind of things I see being reported, how I wish I can be able to go and see, and also experience comparative visits. But it always comes with a little bit of that caution, because we have our neighbors here in Somalia. They missed it by a day or two. They've not gotten their country back for over 40 years. It's not a good thing to give them as an example, but it is always a reminder that a good country heading somewhere can always go south. That country called Somalia, they don't immunize their children. In fact, I'm told, if you want to know a Kenyan Somali and a Somali who just came through the borders because William opened that mpaka na vitambulisho zinauzwa kama jugu karanga huko, wagalia mkono. If there's no evidence of any immunization, then you know that is not a person who has been in our system. Sababu Kenyans, you open, you kagalia mkono yako, there is evidence of immunization time to time. That has not happened in that country now, I'm told, for well over 40 years.
Okay.
So maybe 40, thereabout.
Something else that was major and made news is when Traore and I think the Niger guy and also the Mali guy decided to send away the soldiers from France and America. What impact will that have in terms of those countries' development or lack thereof?
It's the same thing Kibaki did. he looked east. He didn't talk about it, but he sent away the West. They kept doing horrible things, but he never looked their way. And that is the kind of thing. You have to come and make a very radical decision, but if you're able to make it without rattling, it's the thing that must be done by people who can see where we are. Being enslaved by the World Bank, IMF, was a terrible thing that was done by Moi for 24 years. Kibaki got us out of it. Fortunately for us, I say fortunately, is that I don't think we have quite created the infrastructural mechanism to allow them back into the country the way they were 24 years ago. But that is what I thought they knew they were going to get through William. But even them, the level of reliability and reliability of these people in power na uongo yao iliwafikia wakasema hata kama tunataka kuingia kule hao ni waongo zaidi kutuliko, wacha tuachane na hawa. So those are very radical decisions, and you can see these guys in the West have continued to exploit Africa, and we will continue, quarreling because we are being mismanaged by people who are out there. Hii kitu Ruto alikuwa anatuletea hapa kutuambia carbon credit things, those were arms, and I am told today, by the way, we have counties in this country that have entered in contract that they cannot deal with their land the way they had, that because they have already signed these carbon credit things. So for them to continue benefiting, they had to sign off their rights. And we need to do an audit of how many of our leaders did that. For all I care about those carbon things, I think it was a scam. It was meant to steal money from us, and it's money that will be given to us, but we remain slaves to another for X number of years. So we need somebody, you need a radical decision to come and say, what is this that was signed? This is nonsense. We are getting out of this. We are not going to honor this. And countries also need to know, those who are enslaving us, needs to know that we have a capacity to come and say nonsensical agreements are not going to be honored just like that. Of course, we have obligations as a nation to ensure that we don't get ourselves in a mess. But that's the cost of having poor leaders, poor individuals in leadership. They can get us into very difficult engagements with other nations. Now, huku nje, they are looking for people to exploit. Because they have populations they cannot feed unless they are exploiting a country with minerals, with resources, with even human power. I mean, that kind of thing. And you need the protection of those in power, and especially the young people needs to be protected from that exploitative nature. I don't want to say anything much, but even sending of our young people to countries like the Arab world, you are not sure that it is their brains being engaged. They are in need of a livelihood, and we put them into that desperate state, and it is very scary to think that perhaps they are not being treated well. We are getting quite a number of those reports.
But it is the reality, even if we don't think we have seen stories have been done, and it's inevitable to talk about it. Yeah. When President Trump was marking 100 days of power this week, what would you make up of his leadership of course, the U.S.?
He's a very abrasive leader. But if you look at some of the things that he has achieved, it would be very difficult to just condemn him. Without doubt, the influx of people from Latin America, and perhaps he keeps saying from all over the world, but through that Texan side, was a scare to every other person, even those of us who are not in the US. Watu wakiingia Kenya yenye namna hii itakuwa shida. And the fact that they used to have thousands of people in a day and he's reduced them to less than 100 a day, that's a major achievement. Perhaps not a positive thing, but this thing of tariffs, he's put everybody in a spin, the whole world. So there is something that we need to ask ourselves. What is it? What I was asking myself the other day is, are we that inconsequential that we have not bothered looking for ways to go and negotiate our trade arrangements, are we that poor or that insignificant in the global market? And perhaps, or are we, maybe people don't see any value in us. But when Uhuru said that, when he made a comment about the USID, munapiga kelele nini na pesa si yenyu, the fact that they had him all the way in the US means that there is something they know, and we are not that insignificant, is that they don't have any regard for our kind of leadership that we have today. But at Trump, what do I look at Trump? He knew what he needed to do within 100 days, and he went to do it. Some positive, some not positive. A leader needs that kind of a resolve. This country will need a person with a resolve to take us completely in the opposite of the direction we are heading. It is going to be painful. You could make mistakes in the process, but we will make more steps in the positive than in the negative. I looked at that 100 days of Trump. Yeye anajua kujipigia debe. Sijaona kiongozi mwingine duniani ambaye hata wale wa kanisa, huyu anajipigia debe na njia ya maajabu. But even in the midst of all those things, you can see that he's a quite effective leader.
One of the key things that has been very substantial during those 100 days is the war between Russia and Ukraine. And of course, during campaign, he used to say 24 hours, it will end. Do you think he's going to succeed?
Yeah, perhaps not within the time frame that he gave, but already you can see it slowing down. He's been able to sit with those leaders, and the starting point is for people to agree to sit down. Thereafter, mkikaa chini lazima mtaongea. And the fact that he's able to sit down with these leaders from time to time, or even engage them over the phone, then eventually there will be a solution that will come out of it. If I use the Rocco case, which we were being given by Raila and Uhuru, it's when they decided that it's important to reach out to each other for the sake of this country. They got into the room at Harambee House, and for almost 6 hours, saying nothing, just taking coffee, kukunywa chai, unamuka, unaenda, unaweka chai, without even going to the issue. But it was so crucial that they couldn't leave the room without having touched the things. And it took them more than a day of each other, talking without anybody else in the room, for them to eventually come up with the 9-10 issues that were put in the BBI. So the ability to bring another to the table is a major step, major step. And the fact that he's now able to bring all these people across the world to the table, it means that he's a very impactful person. He brags about it, perhaps he's undoing. But I am also impressed by the way he can cause even the Chinese to start thinking. There's a Kenyan importer who was telling me, because of what Trump is doing in the US, they are now able to access some more quality goods for us at a better price than it was the case before. So I was talking about the impact. You can also see it's impacting on our lives right here.
There's a picture, I don't know if you were following the Pope's funeral, but there was a picture where Trump was captured with the Ukrainian president, just the two of them. What would you make up of that?
That's power play. Serious power play. And the fact that he would be able to put those chairs, those are our events chairs in this country. Pale katikati na wakae na wao na huyo. One, that's really serious power play. It's a man who is engaged in these issues. And two, he knows how to use occasions. Pope was a person pursuing peace, even between Ukraine and he went and tried to pursue the same there. And three, that he even created that time to talk to the president, or this Zelensky guy, was in a way also trying to amend for what may have gone wrong in the White House when he was kicked out. So it was really power play. And those are the things that I believe would help us get peace in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, because it's also impacting on our state of our economy.
Great.
Yes.
Very interesting to hear you and your thoughts about the geopolitical space.
Kidogo tunasoma usiku.
It is very, very important for us also. Now, back, just as we come to the conclusion, I mean, there are a lot of young people who watch our content, and of course, they'll be watching you. Just to understand, how did you transition yourself into politics?
By the way, maybe quite a debate, not a debate, a story. I never got into politics because I had any money. It is just something that struck me. One, in Daragwa, and two, the pain that we had been put through by Moi. But crucially, I sat with Kibaki, 1997 or 96 there. I invited him to a professional function. And while we were waiting for the program to start, we were at the Radiant Towers. I don't know whether that is still the name of the hotel, Radiant Towers.
The Safari Club.
Yes, that's where we were. I remember, and it had taken us almost more than 2 years to get him to be a guest of honor at an annual dinner for the Institutional Surveyors of Kenya. And while we were there, then I told him about the corruption level at City Hall. You know, we used to have, I think, the City Commission or something like that. We were calling them the City Fathers then. And why I raised it with him is because he was the chairman of DP. And majority of the councillors then, led by Akinamaina Commander, were councillors running the Nairobi City Commission. That's what it was being called by Moi. So I was telling and I was a member of DP and a young Democrat. We used to call ourselves young Democrats. We said, these councillors are embarrassing us. They are doing things we never thought they would do. And even before I could go beyond that statement, he told me they will continue na ile Kiswahili yake. Wataendelea kufanya hiyo mpaka wewe ambao unafikiria wewe ni mzuri sana ukubali kukuja kwa siasa. That still links in my mind. You, as a young person, you can look for ways of getting in to do it right. But don't come again and insult us like we are seeing some of the young people in parliament insulting us left, right, and center, or taking part in the stealing that is happening. So you must be pushed by something, not the greed, not the desire to drive a V8 or a Plando or to wear a good and something. If it is the desire to serve, you will continue serving. You will go out like I've been left out by the people of Daragwa, not once. But when you go back, they say, kuja. And when they don't have time for you, you go out and you're happy because unajua utaenda na hakuna kitu watakuuliza. You did your best. The young people, they need to believe in themselves. Money is necessary, but it is not everything. The passion. If you have that passion to serve, pesa itakufuata. Itakufuata. Ama utaona ile 10,000 uko nayo ikifanya kazi ambayo inafanywa na mwingine na milioni 10. And that is why I really get excited when I see a genuine young people. You know, we have some chorus pia. Na si wachache.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see huyu anatafuta tu bahari ya kwenda kuleta ukora. But when you have really people who are genuinely looking for that leadership, they will become the Traore of this country. They just need to keep at it. But you also need a person at the top who will not be looking for ways of exploiting the young people, but allowing them to be. Kibaki allowed us to be. I went once, and I'll tell you why I want to push, I keep pushing Jubilee to remain the national party and not just a village party. Kibaki also asked us one day when we were member, very young early days of our membership in parliament, we went and we were complaining about the Mogeki then. And that's why I don't like names being given to our community or people. That those days we had many things, Sugusungu, Nini, yet we ilikuwa Mogeki. Now we have other names about wengine wanajiita na sijui maana yake Itungatis and such. Those names are not useful. Profiling people, walefi, majeshi, nini, those things are not useful. But he asked us, we had gone complaining about that. He asked us, we were about 28 members of parliament for Mount Kenya. And we had engaged, and he had time for us. Akakaa pale, tukaongea Sema, no, kweli. So when we were now asking for him to give us his thinking in terms of solution, sema ni kweli, hii umesema ni sawa. Then he looked at us and said, he asked us, na sasa nyinyi, nani mwingine anajua nyinyi isipokuwa mimi? Hata wale watu walipigia wewe kura wanakujua kweli? Ni kukaa tu hapa, mnakaa tu kwa hii ofisi. Sisi kidogo tulitembea hapa, tukaenda maliza hapo, tukaenda duniani. So wakati tulikuwa tunasema mambo, Wakenya wanatujua. So he left it at that. What was the challenge? You need to know you need to be more than just looking for grade here. Go around the country. And that's what I'm challenging these young people. They want to become leaders, but village leaders, local leaders. They don't want to step on a national platform where they become national leaders. And that's why you have to avoid a village, a local political party. It will reduce you to just become a small leader. I mean, I can go anywhere in Mombasa and stand and speak, but I've never been a president of this country. You use those platforms that are available to become a national leader, whether you're in parliament or not. And that is what we are going to do as Jubilee Party. And that's why we are not going to reduce it to a local party. And that's why I fear when I see people trying to galvanize people in small cocoons. If Matiang'i is also not on a national platform, he would struggle to sell himself outside Kisii.
True.
And that is what the young people need to know. When you are starting politics, we were lucky because, yes, we started in DP, because we never wanted to do anything to do with the CAN, which was a national thing. But Kibaki quickly abandoned anything that looked local. When DP looked like it has now been confined to Mount Kenya, he abandoned it and went for another unit. Because you have to be on a national platform for you to become a national leader and for your ideas to have any meaning, even on the floor of the house. I will give an example to the young people. When I had many of those issues that I kept talking about on the floor, I remember now the former governor of Busia, Ojamong, he came and said, Kioni, I always look at anything you bring on the floor with a lot of suspicion. And I try and oppose it. Lakini hii umeleta hii, it is making sense. All the way from Busia. So for you even to move a motion on the floor and others governors allowed it, you need to have cultivated an image beyond your local thing. And I like the young people, the Gen Z, because they are not being swallowed by this some of the programs we have, which are very good also. But there is a program that has been introduced that was very popular and it really did us some damage when Ruto was coming to power. It was called Kirerebe. Urareboka tu na Kikuyu. But when a piece of registration is put on the table, it has legal language, it is in English, hakuna kurereboka, you need to put your sensible mind on it. But if you came through some of those channels, you now reduce parliament to a kurereboka thing. Just But at the end of the day, young people are being killed, we cannot afford to live, people are out of schools, roads are not being done, because others are using your naivety to do things that are not useful to us.
Very true.
Young people, step on national platforms.
Step on that. I hope you're taking the challenge as a young person. Is there anything you regret not to have done when you're in leadership?
When we were doing the constitution, there are a couple of things that we should have done, and especially as we were 27 of us at Naivasha. Though the pressure was perhaps beyond our inability, we allowed suspicion between PNU and ODM to weigh on us when we were doing the 2010 constitution. That's something that we should have worked on. The other thing is that's an area that I believe we should have reduced our suspicion and had trust of one another with us. Because of the way we had been cultured in our political thinking, when Olengo would say something, you look at him and say, it cannot be good for us. But some of the ideas that were coming from Olengo, some of the ideas that Uhuru had, which were now finding their way into the BBI, and even Raila into the BBI, are issues you would have done when we were at Naivasha. But the suspicion level made it difficult for us. If that had been reduced, we will not be where we are. Let me tell you, if it had been reduced, we will not be having William as a president of this republic. It is some of those gaps that we created that he exploited.
So your insecurities as politicians failed us at that point?
Suspicion, not insecurity. It's in suspicion. That you look at the other person and you don't look at him as a person wishing well the country. You think amekuja tu kuteta mambo ambayo ni ya kufinyilia. And it's not one way. It was both ways. You still can see those statements. You look at some of the statements, if you look at some of the statements that are being issued by some members in parliament, even today, towards another community, it is still that very retrogressive point of thinking. And saa zingine unasikiria huruma kwa sababu hajaona hiyo maneno. But then also you see, we had this Vision 2030. And we kept debating on it in parliament. How can we give it some legal, framework so that any government that comes doesn't deviate from it? Because it's good for the nation. But again, it was not easy. I don't think it is easy to ever put that kind of a vision into a legal document. Because we have deviated from it. If you ask William which vision is driving him today, we don't know which one. I think the Chakahora vision or something. We had Vision 2030, and they have completely abandoned it. So we don't know whether we are going north or south. We are in a confusion. That is very important to ensure that you secure the direction of the country into the future. That time you are given. And not to say that is the end of it.
There is hope.
Yeah. There is hope.
There is hope for our country.
This country, let me tell you. We get the right person 2027. Within 100 days, you see people smiling. Not because things will have been done, everything will have been achieved, but hope, direction will have been brought back.
All right, great. When you're not politicking or representing people, I don't know if you still go to courts.
I do, but rarely do I, hata kwa mambo ya kesi zingine you win, but you also sympathize with the person who lost. That heart is also there. So when I'm not politicking, a little bit of that, of course, I'm happy that vijana wengine wanachukua hiyo, so you are with them, but they are the ones doing it. Watu ambao mnajuana na wao. I am a trained Karua, property manager, project manager. But I think when I'm not politicking, I'm happy to be engaged in social issues. What
do you do for fun? You know, social issues are not necessarily fun. It could be for country.
For fun. If there is any fun left in this country.
Good question. So, I
listen a lot to, not really music, but I really listen a lot to some of these politics across the world. I'm on, like your age, I'm on YouTube, listening to what is happening in Israel, what is happening in the US, that I could take up my fan page. And it is not a good thing when you are with your spouse. So you need to keep working on it.
Okay. Yeah. What's the one book you've read that stands out for you and why?
Audacity.
Why?
Because it's a person who got to where he got because he was audacious. He believed and did it. That's meaning that the young people, they believe in something, keep going at it. Obama.
Always a good one. Great. As we conclude, what's your vision for a better Kenya or the best of Kenya?
I believe that when we were getting into politics, which is not a long time ago, but just within the other 10, 15, 20 years, you wouldn't have seen somebody driving a Fit heading to Daragwa, to Nakuru, to Kisumu, even to Mombasa. Today, it doesn't take a lot of thinking. You know you take longer, but you are not fearful that the vehicle will not get you to your destination. Why? Because the level of roads, the quality of our roads has improved so drastically within that short period of time you also are not quite worried that you are going to be out of power because you can't charge your phone. You know from within anywhere near, if not within your own house, you're likely to get power. If you have a mechanical breakdown, you are certain that somebody will be able to fix it along the way as you go. Those were not the laxities that we had some 20 years ago. When I would plan to go to Daragwa, it had to be on a 4-wheel because I will certainly get stuck. And if I need to get back into town to work, I need to get a proper vehicle. Sometimes if you had a bally of people, do you know it's just the other day that we stopped looking for 4-wheel cars to carry coffins, to rest our wale ambao wametuacha. Why? Because every time we were fearful, tukifika huko barabara zitakuwa namna gani? Today, you see people putting their loved ones in a Mercedes Benz and wanaenda. That is a country that can change with a similar magnitude in another 10 years. I see that kind of a direction and us going that way very, very quickly. You could not see people with degrees back in the rural areas and wanakaa kule, wanakunywa pale, everything. That was not the case. I saw this Kafua Troiro. You have Magunas all the way from here, Nairobi, all the way down. That is the kind of development that we want. And we can get back to that trajectory within a very short time. That's what I'm looking for. Even when we are looking for leaders. And that's why I believe that na Wakenya, unaona, usifikirie ukiona hawaelewi, wewe unaweza fanya nini, wewe unaweza fanya nini, wewe unaweza fanya hivi. Kwa hivyo wakifika pahali waseme, huyu ndio tunataka, atuondolee Ruto, na atuelekeshe kwa barabara fulani, awe kutoka kwa jamii dogo ama kubwa, wale ambao wanatafuta viti, tafadhali sikiza. You know, it is this girl called Wajira is your age mate or your age group. Wajira is, I think, in one of the social justice. Madara. Yes, I think he's the one who said the other day, even fools grow old. So usije ukafikiria kwa sababu sisi ni wazee tuko na kujua sana, hata wajinga pia wanazeeka. I really like that statement. It was on JKF.
I mean, I was avoiding to ask this question, but let me just ask because I know you speak with former President Uhuru Kenyatta oftentimes. What is his, and actually it's good I put it here, if he is ever willing to talk to us, we are ready. We will come to Gatundu or Narok or wherever he's
I'm
retired.
sure if he watches this and hears your request, he will be very ready to talk to you.
We will be very happy.
He has, he is one person with a very big heart for young people. Very big heart for young people. There is no sitting I've sat with him without him talking about the young people.
And my question now, fully, that was just a request that came in. What is his feeling about the country?
We are heading the wrong way.
And what solutions does he offer?
Well, you see, he offered solutions for 10 years. I don't want to say this, but he also cautioned us in the kind of leaders that we were making, or the kind of choices we were making in 2022. All of us, without exception, perhaps only those in power, now know that we made the wrong choices. Those who are there, even those who left, there are those who are dying to meet him so that he can try and sanitize them. Because they really got us into a mess. And it is not that he has anything against anybody. The way I've seen him, he has nothing against anybody. But when you start getting us the long way, lying, getting people doing, that hurts him. That hurts him. And I can tell you, anytime he has had any opportunity to sit with anybody, including, I'm sure, with those who are leading us, that is the thing he has mentioned to them. Why are you doing this? When you talk about people being harassed by the taxman, he's not an exception. He runs biashara, and I'm sure he also feels it. He's looking at the profit margin or whatever it is that he's running. It is not where it was before. He underwent all the insults that were there, including lies. He owns the airport. The SGR is going to his farm. All those things. But now that you are in charge and you know what you are saying is a lie, why are you not making a change? These are the questions. Na ya nini maana ya kuendelea kuongea uongo? And let it be. But I say this on his behalf. Wachaneni na Maito. Do everything else but respect that first lady. Please do, for the good of this country. And this, sisi tumewekwa hapa. Me, I believe that there is a God in heaven. And anaangalia maneno. And there are times you can get a nation on the wrong side by just how you treat the aged, the widows, the orphans, the people in need. The other day I was in the slums with Mathare. This, we need to be very careful with some of those things. In our abundance, let us not show arrogance.
Very good closing remarks, Secretary General. We appreciate your time so much. Thank you for coming through and sharing with us. I believe Kenyans have gotten a lot because they've been asking for you on the show also. Wow. And we will be happy to have you once again. And also, again, these I'm throwing here so that it gets in your heart. We want Matiang'i and Uhuru Kenyatta to
I will deliver the same message, possibly today.
Fantastic.
But I also want to thank you for giving me that opportunity, and also celebrate you as a young person for having this kind of an establishment, creating employment for the young generation and even older people, and play that many of us can be able to do what you have done, and that we can get this country into create an environment that will allow many more young minds to show their ability to innovate.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and karibu sana. Thank you for watching this episode. Of course, share with us in the comments section what you feel about the Secretary Generals of Jubilee contributions and what you're looking forward to in terms of having a better Kenya for all of us. We'll see you on the next episode. If you've not subscribed by now, please do subscribe. We have more guests, as he has promised, coming, and you should not miss any of them. So, see you on the next one.
Asante sana.